All right, welcome to our first digital lesson for Explore Creative. We are going to be continuing our unit on interior design this week and next week, and then I have confirmed a few guest speakers for the next couple weeks, so that will help us to finish up the month of April, and then hopefully we'll be back together in May. I'm really hoping and praying we'll be back together in May because I really wanted you guys to have a unit with Mrs. Vianeta, Avery's mom, on photography to kind of finish up the semester. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the design process, okay? So we're going to talk about what you would do as an interior designer, what your job day-to-day would kind of look like, and the process at which designers go through in order to service their clients best. And then after that, we're going to talk about some of the practical things that you would want to think about to work into your design, or the scope and the different materials and things that designers work with, and kind of the things you have to check off as you're actually working through that design. So the first thing, obviously, as a designer, you're going to go to school, all the things, building your business. You can either work for a company or you can work for yourself. We talked about some of those things and some of the different fields that designers can work in at our last meeting, which was like 3 weeks ago. So remember, you can be specifically a kitchen and bath designer. You can specifically do government offices, buildings, commercial spaces, residential spaces. The scope of what you can do within the design world is very broad. You can be a textile designer, you can be a furnishings designer, so you don't have to just be designing spaces, you can be designing the things which fill the spaces as well. That's still considered interior design. So if you're, most designers are residential interior designers, and that's what the field that most people wind up getting into. It's the field that I worked in. I worked with a lot of kind of DIY type clients, and then towards the end of my time as an interior designer, I worked for a large paint company. So I worked for a contractor, and he sent me in to work with his residential and commercial clients picking paint colors for their projects. So that was kind of fun. It wasn't a huge scale design, and I kind of would just go interview people, help them with selections on site in the space, write up a report, and I was done. So it was good for me in that season of life when I was homeschooling and needed to be a little bit more present with my kids, but I still was getting out of the house and having some fun with it, with my skills and my training. So as a residential interior designer, the first step with working with a client is to do your consultation, and that's really the period where you're getting to know your client, okay? So that's when you need to learn about their lifestyle. How do they live? Are they very active? Are they messy? Are they clean? Just being really honest with people about how they live in the space that they are wanting you to design. The next step then is their needs. What are their needs? So sometimes people don't really know their needs, and like I told you guys before, a lot of my job as a designer, even as a paint consultant, I played the role of kind of marriage counselor a lot, because you're having to hear the husband's wants and needs and the wife's wants and needs and then the kids' activities and stuff, and you're having to mesh all of those things together and come up with an aesthetically pleasing solution to everybody's wants and needs. It can be quite challenging, but it is also one of the, it's so rewarding when your clients look at you and say, wow, this is perfect, you've thought of everything. So that's a really good feeling to have. So you're doing their lifestyle, their needs. Do they need seating for 10? Do they need seating for 4? Do they need flooring that will take a lot of beating, a lot of wear and tear? Do they have pets? Do they live in certain climates or environments that would require certain things to be built into the design, like heated floors or heated towel racks if you're doing a bathroom in a cold climate? And then you really want to know how the space should function, okay? So how how do they use the space? How should it function? Where are the windows in the space? Are they going to reflect on the TV, on the artwork? Where is the sun in relationship to the room that you're working in? Because that actually the sun coming in, or how it wears on materials even, can make a huge difference on things. One of the other things to think about during your consultation is their timeline. So how soon do your clients need this project done? Now, is this one of those clients that waits until July, who needs their space done by Thanksgiving, or are they calling you in October and they want something done by Christmas? And you have to be realistic with people about whether that's a timeline that you can work with professionally. And then if it's a realistic timeline, it's always better to over deliver in the end and under promise at the beginning. If you have doubts that you can get something done by Christmas, but if you work really hard to get it done by Christmas, are those clients going to be happy? Yeah, they're going to be happy. If you tell them you can get it done by Christmas and then you don't, are they going to be upset? Yeah. So a lot of this is simple sales and customer management techniques that you have to learn over time. Remember, always under promise and over deliver. The other thing that you need to work with, this is probably the biggest one, and this is where you're going to see a lot of husbands and wives huffing and puffing at each other, and that's budget, okay? So you need to know what your client's budget is and how much wiggle room they have in it. A lot of people have really big dreams and they don't have a lot to spend. I think you guys heard me say I worked with a lot of DIY clients. So what I would do is I would go in and meet with people, put together a plan that they could work on over time, and I would help them prioritize what they should be buying when they had money and how much money they would need for each of those things and how they would get the biggest impact long term. So they would pay me to consult with them, and then I generally wouldn't see much of what they did after that. I would come in, help them, give them a plan, and walk away. I do make myself available for follow-up, which we will talk about as well. But budget is huge. How much do you have to work with? A lot of my clients had $500 to $1,000, and I got to help them make the biggest bang for their buck with that much money. And it is possible to work with small budgets. Of course, the bigger budget you have as a designer, the more fun you can have, and probably the more quality design you're going to produce that you can use for your portfolio. But don't get fixed on your portfolio. Get fixed on making happy clients, because if you are able to offer great customer service and work with your clients in a manner that makes them really pleased with your job, do you think they're going to talk about you and recommend you to their friends and family? Yeah, and maybe when they do come into some money, who are they going to call? They're going to call you because they trust you and they've worked with you before. I've had a lot of repeat clients over my time, and that's, I just helped a client, and I'm technically retired from design, but she reached out, and it was a quick, easy project that they just want me kind of coming in every once in a while and checking in with them on a kitchen remodel. And so she just texted me the other day and said, thanks for still giving time to these big budget projects. And she was being sarcastic, but I knew that she really appreciated still being able to use my expertise in the area, but not being turned away because it wasn't going to make me thousands and thousands of dollars. So it wasn't my bread and butter, but I tend to have a heart for people, and so I'm willing to help when and where I can. So next, you need to know the scope of the client's needs. Is there any special need that they have? Is there anyone going to be in the house regularly that has a disability that you need to work with? Or do they have bad knees? Are stairs going to be difficult for them? Can you do anything to help make their lifestyle a little bit easier? Always, 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 if you're a designer, carry a measuring tape, okay? You got to get to know the space. So that's going to include taking some measurements, and we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes about how important it is to be able to take measurements. And so you need a notebook, you need a pen, paper, pencil, and you need a measuring tape. You really want to get to know the space. Like I said, you want to pay attention to where the sun is. You want to pay attention to where windows are, electric outlets. Is that what they're called? Outlets, okay, for plugging in lamps and TVs and all those things, because if you're gonna have to relocate things to work with the design, that's something that you need to know in advance so that you know to build that cost of moving outlets or installing outlets or wiring into different spaces. You need to know that that's gonna be a cost that you're gonna have. And then at this time too is usually when you present your designer fees. So how do you charge? How do you charge your clients? Some designers charge hourly, so for every hour that they work, they charge a certain fee. Some designers do what's called cost plus, which means that whatever the client spends or whatever the design costs, they do that cost plus 40%. Designers get discounts on a lot of things, so they get things wholesale or they get at a specialized price, and so the client will get things at that discounted price, but then they're going to pay you 40-50% above that. That's generally what's accepted is cost plus 40. And then the third way is a fixed bid. That means that you get paid a flat fee, and then they pay you that fee, and you see the design all the way through until they're satisfied. That can get dangerous, but that's how some designers prefer to work. Okay, so that's kind of what you're going to do in the consultation. You're going to get to know their needs, their lifestyle, how they want the space to function, their timeline and preferences, their budget, their goals. You're going to take measurements and really get to know the space, and then your fees. So after all that, you're going to go away and you're going to enter the designing phase, okay? And so that's where you're going to do your research. You're going to start compiling a look and feel. And when we talk about mood boards, that's kind of one of the directions that you're going in. You're picking colors, materials, furnishings, all the things that would go into the space. You're going to research and brainstorm for that design. You're going to start sketching, okay? So you're going to do sketches and renderings. Now, a sketch is a quick thing that you do on paper, and a rendering is more formal. It's where you show the client what the space will actually look like once those furnishings are put in place. Now, a lot of people, when I was in school, we did this by hand, okay? And some people used CAD, which is computer-aided design, but most people did it by hand. Nowadays, there are programs like Google SketchUp that you guys can actually get accounts with. It's kind of fun to use. I taught a whole semester class on it years ago, but that's one way that you can do a rendering. And there's a lot of other programs out there that you can use to do interior design renderings. Some people still prefer to do it by hand, but there's options now. And then you're going to start to collect materials. So this was probably one of the most fun parts of the whole design process for me, because I love fabric. Love fabric. I think I told you guys I went on a field trip when I was in design school to a design center in Laguna Niguel, and I walked into a fabric showroom and literally started crying. They had Ralph Lauren linens, floor to ceiling, probably about 10 feet long on these racks, and I just got to look through them and touch them and feel them and study the patterns. I don't know why. I just love fabric, okay? And so you're going to start to collect materials. So you're going to be collecting fabric swatches, wood samples for finishes on furniture. You're going to be collecting carpet and flooring samples, anything that you can get a sample of, tile, and you're going to compile those to be part of your design presentation when you go to meet the client. You're going to start to break down your budget details, okay? So for everything that you're putting in the space, you're going to be either doing an estimate for things like flooring, or you're going to be doing the actual cost of pieces of furniture. And so you're going to break that down for the client so they can see exactly where their money is going. And this is when you have to get creative to make sure that those materials fit within the budget that the client has. You're also going to be putting together a floor plan. So that's something that we're going to be doing. We're going to start that this week, and we're going to keep working on it. And we'll talk about that in a little while, but where you actually sketch out or draft out the floor plan of the room, and then where each piece of furniture is going to go in the space. So the client can see the flow of the room without you actually having set it up yet. And it's actually pretty easy. It's when I I started design school right out of high school at community college. I took a class, and the drafting part and the estimates for flooring and all the things that had to do with math are what turned me off of design. And so I didn't take any more design classes. I went back to school for just general education, and then as an adult, once I had children and stuff, I went back to design school because I wasn't scared of those things anymore, and I realized that I really did enjoy decorating and designing a space from beginning to end. So I had an inkling about it, and I let the math scare me and the drafting, and I actually love drafting now. So, and then once you get all those things together, you're going to compile your sketches, your renderings, your budget, your materials, samples, pictures of furniture pieces and stuff, your floor planning. You're going to put together a presentation. Now, a lot of people used to do this on big boards, and it was really fun to put those together. I did that during design school as well, and for clients, but a lot of people do that digitally now. And so a lot of designers will just have iPads or even put together digital presentations that they just then send to their clients. And that's another point. If you're a designer, you can do everything computer based, right? You can have clients that live 1,000 miles away and don't have to travel there because you can do a lot digitally. I have a girlfriend that got into design, and she's actually very well published now. She's been published in Architectural Digest, which is kind of the biggest thing that you can be published in. And she posts all the time because she lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, but she has a client in San Clemente. So she does a lot virtually, and then she flies down there every once in a while as needed to meet with contractors or to do check-ins to then see what they need to work on next. All right, so the presentation then is when your client either says you're on the right path or, oh my gosh, I hate this. So, and that's where we come into the revision process, okay? So built into your original contract with your clients, when you do that fees phase, you want to work in how many revisions you can do. I actually had a client once that I met with six times, designed a ton of stuff for her, and she never hired me. And it's because I didn't have a clause in my contract about revisions or even about intellectual property, which is the fact that when I design something, it belongs to me until you pay me for it. But live and learn, so make sure if you're going to work, you have a good contract in place. And so when you go to do your revisions, it's appropriate to have 2 or 3 revisions for a design. Make sure you work that time into your original bid, but then also make sure that you put a cap on that so that you're not stuck in revision phase forever, especially if it's a smaller budget project, and then you never get to the design phase. All right, so after you've done your revisions, if you have any, the client's gonna say, yep, go ahead, here's the money, here's the budget, spend. And that's when you get to purchase. That's the fun part. Okay, so that's when you get to actually start buying all the materials that you need, whether it be flooring, hiring contractors, buying sofas and chairs and plants and all of the fluff. I had a client one time, she lived in $1 million home, and we went room by room designing each room. And so we would get the hard stuff done, the painting, the wallpapering, the furnishings, and then she'd say, come by, I'll give you some cash, and I want you to get all the fluff. And so she'd give me a wad of cash, and she would let me go and just buy like all the accessories and stuff. And so I would go to the store, or I'd go shopping all around. I'd buy a bunch of stuff. I'd come in with bags. I'd put everything. I'd hang everything. I did a lot of the installation stuff myself. I'd hang curtains, draperies, all that kind of stuff myself. I'm pretty hands-on, and I'm pretty good with power tools. And she'd say, great, thanks. And then, sometimes I'd have multiple options, and she'd come in and say, yes, no, that one. And then I would go, and I'd take everything back, and then she would pay me for my time. It was so much fun. She was a busy executive, and she didn't want to deal with it. She just wanted it to be done and look pretty. And so I was a great help to her in that. So that was fun. And she's one of those repeat clients that I've had over the years, but she now has moved across the country, so I don't see her anymore, but she was amazing. All right, so again, when you purchase, you're spending your budget on approved materials. You're making necessary appointments and with your resources or your contractors, and you're managing the implementation of all of those different portions of the design that need to be worked on in the client space. And you always, always, always want to make sure that you're maintaining good communication with your client, that you're texting, emailing, whatever their preferred form of contact is. Make sure you ask them how they prefer to work with people. And then you're going to make sure you're keeping good communication with your clients. Communication is key, okay? That way when things come up, people know that, you know, you've done your due diligence to not only manage all of these other parts of the design process, but that you're showing that you care by making contact with them regularly, okay? So then things start to get installed, okay? And when you go to design school, you'll learn which order those things should happen in. You don't want furniture delivered before flooring's put in. Or if you have it delivered, you need to make sure that there's a place to store it. Either you have a storage unit and then someone that can move it for you later, or that the client has room to store it somewhere else in the house or the garage or whatever. But the installation process happens, and you should probably be on site for most of that unless you have a trusted team of contractors that you already work with that you know represent you and your business in a manner that reflects who you are and the business management strategies that you have for working with your clients, okay? So hopefully the install happens, you adjust and respond to what's needed. And then when everything's done, you want to do a client follow-up, okay? This is where you review the work that you've done with your client. They're going to give you feedback about what's working, what's not working. This is kind of where you need to be a really good listener and find out how you did it doing your job. If there are changes that need to happen, or maybe contractors that need to come back and fix things, that's part of your job as well. And then this is when you would go back in and take photos for your portfolio. This is one of my biggest failures as a designer. I don't have any pictures of anything that I've done pretty much ever. I never hired a professional photographer to come in and take pictures of my work. And I've done some things I'm pretty proud of and I wish I had pictures of. So make sure during that follow-up phase that you are taking pictures and documenting your work, because a lot of people don't want to be bothered later. If you're 2 years down the road, you're like, hey, can I come in and take pictures? Number one, it's probably not going to look the same. And number two, it's kind of an imposition to your clients that you don't want to do. You want to make sure that you manage that all at the same time. And you probably also want to make sure that you include in your contract that that's part of working with you, is that you have to, you get to come back and take pictures of your work so that you can document it. All right, so that was a little bit of the design process. Hold tight while I change the board, and we're going to talk about all the things that you want to think about as you're putting that design together. All right, so here's a list of the things that you want to make sure that you focus on as you're actually designing the space, okay? So obviously measurements, you need measurements of the space, and then you need to take note of measurements of anything you plan to include into the space. You need an inspiration or a direction from your client. So it's really important, since this is a visual discipline, that you use visual sources to help make sure that you and your client are speaking the same language. Think about the word tan. Tan means a million different things, and it could mean one thing more to you than to your client. So you want to make sure that you have visual representations of what they're talking about. English country design might mean something totally different to them, to your client, than it does to you. So always bring along or use visual representations for that inspiration, or to help you give your project a design direction. All right, color scheme. You want to have, every room should have 3 to 4 colors. Even if you're working within monochromatic design, it should have 3 to 4 tones of whatever you're working with, or values of whatever you're working with. So, and there is a rule called the 60-30-10 rule. So within those 3 colors that you're working with, which is a standard or a minimum, one color should be dominant. 60% of the design should be done in one color, 30% in the next one, and then 10% in another, which would be more like an accent color, okay? So, and then it's really great to have a focal point or an inspiration piece. So that's a good place to start. So like whether it be a rug or a fabric pattern or a piece of art, that can really help to be a great jumping off point for your design. For me, a lot of times it's fabric or rugs. That's been the most common focal point or jumping off inspiration point that I've had when working in the design field. So furniture. So list pieces that you need and go and start doing research. So if you are doing a living room and you need sofa, end chairs, tables, end tables, coffee tables, you need a built-in storage unit, you need all those things. You want to make a list and then start doing your research. Please avoid going to Pottery Barn and buying the set of everything, okay? People don't pay designers to buy sets. They pay designers to come up with creative solutions that look custom, right? They want custom looking solutions. So avoid going and buying that coffee table, end table, console table set. Vary up your design, mix it up a little bit, okay? And then flooring, okay? So remember, this is where we want to think about client needs and do they have a baby, okay? If they have a baby, they probably don't want super hard flooring because baby's gonna be learning to crawl or walk and be falling and hitting their head. So make sure you're thinking through those things so that when you present to your client, you can show and prove to them that you were listening to them during that interview and finding out about their needs and their lifestyle. All right, paint. Paint is the cheapest way to make the biggest impact. So when I worked with clients, a lot of times we painted things, we repainted things, even furniture, to give it that more custom feel or the look that they wanted. So paint, just so you guys know, paint is a lot easier to match two things than to match things to. So if you pick out your paint first and paint, and then you start looking for fabrics, it is so hard to find the fabric to match the paint. There are a billion, don't quote me because I didn't fact check this, but there are a multitude of paint colors, and you can even have things custom mixed. And so if you find a fabric you love, it's so much easier to match that to a paint, to find a paint to match, okay? Another thing is lighting, whether it be chandeliers, ceiling fans, wall lighting, directional lighting, can lights, table lamps, those kinds of things. So you want to look through and plan out your lighting. And then your wall decor. It's good to do wall decor after you've picked out all your furnishings and stuff because you need to make sure that they're going to fit on the walls and in the space that you have in between whatever else you're including in the room. And then lastly, accessories. This is another time when you can really liven up the design. You can have a really good foundation in a room. I have a room in my house right now that I have a really good foundation. I was able to order some of the pieces that I've been looking at and wanting for years, but the room is so boring right now because I really just haven't had time to go out and spend time accessorizing it to really bring it to life. So accessories are kind of like the jewelry to the outfit. It really helps it to come alive, okay? And so you want to make sure too when you do accessories, if you're going to be hanging things, there's the Greek rule of thirds, okay? So anytime you're doing like candlesticks, tchotchkes on shelves, try to do them in threes, okay? So threes will be always more visually interesting. And then another piece of jewelry, maybe we'll call these the shoes, and you know I love shoes. Plants, always add plants into the space. The greenery, the reflection, the life, the nature, bringing the outdoors in, the texture, everything. Plants are such a great addition. So again, with plants, you want to make sure that you've really gotten to know how your clients live. Do they have a green thumb or do they have a black thumb? Do you want to go with real plants or do you want to go with artificial? I always prefer real plants, even if you have to replace them every once in a while, because they just really add life to the space, right? And there are some benefits to having houseplants in your house from an air quality point of view. And you know, in an Inland Empire, we do need to focus on air quality. So anyways, those are just some of the things to think about when you're putting your design together. Hopefully you took notes on this because what we're going to do next, and I'm going to post photos and a tutorial on this on the Edmodo page, but you're going to be drafting out your bedroom, okay? So you're going to measure draft out your bedroom, and then next week we'll talk about how to do place the furnishings and stuff in the bedroom. But you're gonna be drafting out the bedroom, and then you're gonna start going through this process where, remember, I've been telling you to collect pictures on a Pinterest or on some sort of album about your design style, and then you're gonna be coming up with your color scheme, picking a focal point, furniture, flooring, paint colors, lighting, wall decor, accessories, and plants, and you're going to be putting together like a presentation board and a floor plan. And that will be kind of your project for the interior design unit that we're in right now. So I hope this made sense. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we will touch base on Zoom at 1:30 on Wednesday. See you soon.